Good morning and welcome. You are watching Market Cafe on ET Now. I'm Nupur, and joining me on the broadcast today is Meryl. And over the next half hour, we track what's happening in the global markets and we link it back home to India as the markets open later in the day. We begin with a look at how the US markets are performing, and in fact, the US markets closed pretty much higher. The global close look good. That's because the Nasdaq closed higher with a boost of about 1.57% as the latest earnings report from Nvidia and other well-known tech companies have boosted sentiment. Now, the S&P 500 advanced about 0.7%, and the Dow Jones, as you can see on your screens, is up about 0.2%. Nvidia shares have jumped about 8.7% after they beat analyst expectations and forecast strong revenue growth. Now, notably, the chip maker is projected to see a revenue that will that will hit about 70% in fiscal 2028. Now, shares also linked to other semiconductor industries have rallied. Those that have rallied include Broadcom, there's SK Hynix and Intel. Now, traders today, of course, will be very keenly watching out for the Fed Reserve's annual symposium in Jackson Hole, where the Fed chairman Kevin Warsh is slated to deliver a keynote speech. So that's something that everybody will be keeping an eye out for. And let's go across to Meryl now. Meryl, how's oil looking, with the fact that it does appear that talks between the US and Iran seem to be stagnant?
Absolutely. All of that is affecting the global commodity markets, and especially crude oil. Prices are slipping this morning as traders are weighing multiple supply risks. WTI crude is down about 0.6% right now, around that $83 a barrel levels, while Brent is lower by around 0.7 at $89. Markets are also balancing uncertainty around the Strait of Hormuz with fresh risks to Russian energy infrastructure amid the Russia-Ukraine conflict also creeping up. Investors are also watching reports that Venezuela could also potentially exit the OPEC committee. While the immediate supply impact may be limited, this move could raise questions over the OPEC's cohesion and influence on the global crude prices. Moving on to gold prices then, that stays around that 4,600 mark. Spot gold is largely steady, and investors are awaiting Fed Chair Kevin Warsh's Jackson Hole speech for further cues on the US interest rate outlook. But gold thereby is still on the biggest track for its biggest monthly gain since 1999, keeping the precious metal firmly in focus. And moving on to the Asian markets then, that has seen a mixed start. Japan's Nikkei is up about 0.7%, while South Korea's Kospi was down nearly upwards of 1%. Investors are largely holding back ahead of Fed Chair Kevin Warsh's speech, while the Japanese yen is also hovering around the 159 per dollar mark. This is after Japan's key inflation gauge accelerated for a third straight month. Now, moving on to what that means for the Indian markets, the setup points towards more of a softer start. GIFT Nifty is down about that 19 points, indicating a softer open for the markets. Sensex and Nifty also ended lower in the previous session. This was weighed by weakness, mainly in metals, banks and cements. So the overall setup for the Indian markets points towards more of a soft start in the early trading hours.
All right, let's now turn our attention to the disaster that has struck Nepal, and the flash floods. Death toll is now nearing 400, with more than 1,400 people remaining missing across Nepal and Tibet. Now, Nepal's authorities have issued a fresh warning of another flood surge after satellite images showed a lake forming at the disaster site. Now, with the lake rising and potentially at the risk of bursting. Now, the US Geological Survey says a glacial collapse and debris flow rather than an earthquake triggered the catastrophic flooding. At least 178 Indians remain missing, according to Nepal's latest tourism board figures, while India has sent 10 tons of humanitarian aid and essential medicines. Bihar and Uttar Pradesh remain on high alert amid concerns over rising water levels. And in fact, the US president has offered aid to Nepal as the death toll from the devastating flash floods near the Tibet border nears 400, calling the disaster terrible. Trump has said that the US had contacted Nepal's leadership and would provide anything they want in assistance. The U.S. State Department says 90 Americans are currently unaccounted for, with 3 rescue and no U.S. fatalities reported so far. Now, Washington has also sent a disaster response advisor and $500,000 in emergency aid.
Oh, it's terrible. No, and we've called Nepal and we've offered any help that they need. You know, we have a very good relationship with Nepal, and that was brutal. That wasn't just, that was mud and water. It was a mixture. Nobody's ever seen anything quite like that. We're very powerful, strong, strong, well-built buildings were wiped out like they were toothpicks. That's a terrible thing. No, we are sending aid, and we've spoken to the leadership, and we let them know anything they want, we'll have. And there were 50, maybe 60 Americans over there. We haven't gotten the full list yet, but hopefully they're okay. But that looks like something that people will not be, somebody will be lost, unfortunately.
While in other news, Trump has ordered Lake Ontario to be renamed Lake America, escalating the latest chapter in tensions with Canada. In an executive order dated August 27, Trump said that renaming recognizes the lake's economic as well as strategic importance to the U.S., citing American investment in the Great Lakes and its role in shipping, energy, and regional commerce. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney rejected the move, saying the name Lake Ontario is more than 400 years old and it will remain Lake Ontario then, now, and always. Let's listen in.
We're going to be changing the name of Lake Ontario, effective immediately, to Lake America. That's going to take place right now as I sign the order. Do you have anything to say about it, Ben?
Yes, sir. So this is a straightforward but important executive order. It directs Secretary Burgum and the Department of the Interior to update the Geographic Names Information Service to reflect that the lake once known as Lake Ontario will, from this day forward, be known as Lake America. This is a lake that has most of its volume in the United States. The deepest parts of the lake sit in United States territory, so this will reflect that this is an American lake.
Thank you.
Well, this comes after US-Canada ties, of course, have hit lows. Now, going on to what actually boosted the US markets, and Nvidia shares surged on Thursday, adding around $440 billion to its market value as a strong earnings outlook reinforced investor confidence in the AI boom. CEO Jensen Huang has said that AI has now reached its inflection point, with demand for large GPU clusters expanding rapidly. Nvidia expects 70% revenue growth in the fiscal 2028, while Huang said underlying demand is even stronger.
So quite a positive read-through then for the tech sector broadly. But Trump administration is also considering broader tariffs on semiconductors, according to reports. These proposed duties could cover also laptops, data centers, servers, and gaming hardware. And the measures are still at an early stage and could change before implementation.
Now, Fed Chair Kevin Warsh delivers his much-awaited Jackson Hole speech today, with markets looking for clues on the Fed's rate path. Now, Warsh could use the platform to outline his first principles approach to monetary policy, including inflation, the balance sheet, and communication. With Treasury yields in focus, investors will be watching for any signals of the conditions that could trigger a rate move.
In further Fed commentary, Cleveland Fed President Beth Hammack says now is the time to act and raise interest rates to bring inflation down. Hammack, one of the 3 dissenters at the July Fed meeting, says that inflation remains well above the Fed's target of 2% and financial conditions are not restrictive enough. She further warns that longer inflation stays elevated, the greater is the risk of an inflationary mindset taking hold. Markets currently expect the Fed to stay on hold until December.
Now, SK Hynix has broken ground on its first U.S. facility in Indiana, a $4 billion packaging plant that the CEO says will make the state a key HBM production base by 2030. The facility will stack and connect memory chips made in South Korea and China, with its first clean room due in October 2028. SK Hynix expects its U.S. investment and assets to exceed $45 billion by 2030.
But switching focus then, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is set for a key Central Asia visit beginning with Uzbekistan, where he will hold delegation-level talks with the president. PM Modi will then travel to Bishkek for the SCO summit, where security, counter-terrorism, connectivity and economic cooperation will all be the key priorities, with a bilateral meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin also expected to happen on the sidelines. We have Samita on board with us to bring in all the key details from this.
That's right. The Prime Minister is also to participate in the SCO summit in Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan. In fact, he is going to be delivering his address on September 1st. And besides his address, the Prime Minister will also be holding bilateral meetings with his SCO counterparts, some of the SCO counterparts, including with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. And this is something that the MEA confirmed. So, of course, both the sides are going to be reviewing the entire gamut of bilateral ties and, of course, the progress that's been made in several aspects, several pillars of bilateral ties between India and Russia. Now, as far as India's priorities at the SCO summit are concerned, remember, as always, India is going to be focusing on the security aspect of the summit. And, of course, it's going to voice its opposition against terrorism, separatism and transnational crime. Economy is going to be another pillar, along with unity, connectivity and opportunity. Remember, these have been, or at least some of these aspects have been touched upon by the Prime Minister in his earlier speeches at the SCO summit. And of course, let's understand there is another leg of the summit, another leg of the visit of the Prime Minister to Central Asia. In fact, he's going to be visiting Uzbekistan before he goes on for the SCO summit, where the Prime Minister will be holding delegation-level talks with the Uzbekistan president. And of course, of the MEA in a briefing suggested that, of course, there are ties which could expand in sectors that includes critical minerals, IT, pharma, education, because we cooperate on all of these domains. So, of course, these will be explored further on how trade, how investment, how B2B, business-to-business contact, space, technology, critical minerals, investments and mutual cooperation can be increased as far as these sectors are concerned at a time of volatility.
Now, India and Canada have agreed to deepen economic and financial ties with both sides, targeting bilateral trade of around 70 billion Canadian dollars by 2030. The Finance Minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, and Francois Philippe Champagne held the first India-Canada Finance Ministers' Economic and Financial Dialogue in Toronto. India has said that it is ready to begin talks on a bilateral investment treaty, while both sides also backed wider UPIUs in Canada and cooperation in critical minerals.
The world is going through a profound transformation. There's just a lot of uncertainty everywhere. And the geopolitical and economic realities are constantly evolving. So in this background, closer economic cooperation has become increasingly important to build resilient, sustainable and inclusive economies, both in Canada and in India. And therefore, in building this strong relationship, our principals, the Prime Minister of India and the Prime Minister of Canada, have set a very ambitious goal for us. So, and that has brought in fresh momentum and strategic direction to our bilateral relationship. See, the economic and financial dialogue reflects this broad ambition to move beyond traditional trade in goods and services and build a deeper economic partnership encompassing.
But on that note, we'll go into a very short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll bring you fresh market updates and insight leading up to the trading session right after. Welcome back. You've tuned into Market Cafe right here on ET Now. And jumping in straight onto the market updates then, as investors' decade-long wait for the NSE IPO draws close, one question that's playing on everyone's mind is whether the NSE shares will trade on its own platform after the initial listing on BSE. SEBI Chairman Tuhin Kanta Pandey has shed light on that matter. Let's listen to what he has to say.
देखिए उसके बारे में अभी हमने विचार नहीं किया है अभी उसके बारे में विचार करना प्रॉपर वो अभी वो चीज़ दूर है।
चेयरपर्सन से समझा सकते हो क्या फैक्टर्स रहेंगे ऐसी सिचुएशन में जहाँ पे उन फैक्टर्स पे कंसिडर किया जाता है वेदर टू अलाउ और नॉट अलाउ, क्या फैक्टर्स होते हैं?
नहीं, अभी हम इस बारे में नहीं चर्चा कर सकते हैं क्योंकि इसको हमको वी हैव टू अप्लाई अवर माइंड टू द होल।
सर, अप्रूवल एक्सपेक्ट किया जा सकता है इन द नेक्स्ट कपल ऑफ वीक्स? आर वी वेरी क्लोज टू द अप्रूवल फॉर द आईपीओ, फॉर NSE's IPO?
Yes, we are close.
And now, talking at the same event, SEBI chief also addressed the concerns over CAS and whether any changes are in the works.
पे आपका ऑफकोर्स एक रिसर्च फीडबैक पूरा प्रपोजल चल रहा था वेरियस मार्केट स्टेक होल्डर्स से। लास्ट कपल ऑफ डेज हम वीव सीन डाइवर्जेंस इंक्रीजिंग इन 315 प्राइस एंड 330 प्राइस अगेन। क्या फीडबैक आ रहा है, क्या अब तक सेबी के समझ में आ रहा है इन टर्म्स ऑफ व्हाट द मार्केट वांट्स, वेयर इज इट लैकिंग एंड व्हाट चेंजेस आर वी लुकिंग एट? सर,
नहीं, अभी हम कोई चेंजेस नहीं देख रहे हैं और सिस्टम ऐसे ही चल रहा है। पार्टिसिपेशन इस पे बढ़ेगी और सब लोग ब्रोकर्स और वो अपनी ऐप्स में एनेबल करेंगे और लोग सीखेंगे और इस मार्केट में आएंगे।
Switching focus then, Lenskart is in focus today as reports suggest AlphaWave is looking to sell a 1.2% stake in the company through a block deal. Around 2 crore shares are likely to change hands. Snehi gets us all of the key details from this. Snehi?
Absolutely. So we are expecting to see a block deal coming in Lenskart later today, and AlphaWave is going to be selling a stake in Lenskart, and the stake that they're looking to offload is 1.2%. So we are going to be looking for that, and the offer total comes up to 1,313 crore rupees. The floor price at 630 rupees per share, and this is a discount of 1.7% to the company's last closing price. Now this, remember, adds to the list of all the big recent exits that we've seen in Lenskart. Remember the first 6-month lock-in period for the company's share lock-in opened on 8th of May 2026, and we saw AlphaWave Ventures 2 that had already sold some stake earlier, and Bird's Eye View Holdings 2 Private Limited that was also one of the biggest sellers. Recently, more recently, deals include names like SVF2 Lightbulb, that's Cayman Limited, that's a SoftBank entity, Copthall Mauritius, Platinum Jasmine, Match Ritchie Investments, and SFV2 Lightbulb Cayman again, once again, which is a SoftBank associate company, and the deal sizes have been varying between 2,873 crores all the way to 1,400, 1,900 crores. These are some of the recent stake sales that we've seen coming in Lenskart. So early stage PE investors have sold about 5,315 crore rupees. SoftBank 3 deals so far, 5,860 crore rupees sold, and now SoftBank continues to hold 7.3% stake, and total value sold in terms of block deals so far is 15,075, and we're looking at another 1,300 odd crores of a block deal later today. Remember, prominent buyers of the most recent block deal have been names like National Pension Scheme, Goldman Sachs, HDFC, HSBC, ICICI Prudential, Kotak Mahindra, as well as Motilal Oswal Mutual Fund, among some marquee other names. So yes, that's the focus on Lenskart, and we're expecting to see a block deal later today.
Okay, that's the word coming in on Lenskart. That stock is expected to remain in focus today. But another stock that we're going to be closely tracking is Metropolis. The company has targeted revenue CAGR of around 14 to 15% and an EBITDA margin of 27 to 28% over the next 3 years. In fact, they have especially also outlined a very strong, ambitious 3-year growth roadmap with volume-led growth and margin expansion at the helm of it all. The company is expecting a 14 to 15% medium-term revenue CAGR, and the management expects that operating leverage and better asset utilization will be driving this margin expansion. They are also targeting a single-digit working capital cycle, with Metropolis having identified 4 key growth engines for the company, these being centers, wellness, specialty, digital, and acquisitions. These are the areas that the company is going to be focusing on especially. Now, specialty testing contributes over 40% of the company's current business, with genomics emerging now as a key opportunity for them to drive growth further into. The genomics business has doubled so far, supported by advanced sequencing capabilities, and they're looking to take that forward as well. Another major focus that they've highlighted is the planned rollout of 100 mini hubs combining pathology with basic radiology. So overall, Metropolis seems to be targeting a combination of double-digit growth, stronger margins, and deeper penetrations even into the tier 3 markets. They've also got disciplined M&A and productivity improvements, all providing additional upside from here on out for that company. So that will also be in focus today.
Well, with that, it is a wrap on Market Cafe, and we take your leave, but do stay with us on ET Now. The market is up next.